Hi, this is Mary Kay. I'm about to do an ink and watercolor wash of an old truck with pumpkins in it. This is a continuation of last week's lesson where I did ink and watercolor of an old building, the jailhouse in Half Moon Bay. So the first thing I did was I found this photograph of an old truck and I ran it off so that it's a good size to fit on my 8th sheet piece of Arches 140-pound cold press paper. It took a while to do this part. I traced it with water-soluble graphite paper, this gray one, and then I went over it with a pen, a Micron archival permanent pen. I like the PNs because of the tip. That was my prep work. And now I'm just going to paint it. If I have little pencil marks, I can just take it off with a good eraser. So the first place, I think I'm just going to put in that top background. Now, the top background up here is not the sky. It's a foggy mountain. We live here in Half Moon Bay, and we have mountains to the east of us and the ocean to the west of us. I'm going to use French ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to get that gray color. Now I'm going to add a little bit of Antwerp blue into that mix to get a bit of a green. Whoa, that's a lot of Antwerp. Okay, so I'm just trying to get that background grayish, greenish, blue background color. I wet it, so this should be soft. This is my mountains back there. I want this, even though I drew it with the ink, it doesn't need to be just perfectly in there. It can blend and blur just like a regular watercolor. Now I'm going to take that Antwerp and add more burnt sienna to it so that I get a tealish green that I love. And this is the darks here. I'm going to put it in here, right up to my car, to my truck. Over here I have to have the same. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to my Antwerp and get a little bit brighter green. That one's going to go right here along the horizon line, which is the field. And I'm just going to kind of mix those two together and put some trees up into the mountaintop. I want this loose. I don't want my eye. I just want my mind, my eye to know that there's a background behind this truck, but I'm not spending a lot of time on. I'm certainly not worried about the details. And I don't mind if my paint goes over my ink marks. Just gonna call that good. I left a couple of white spots on the paper. I always like that. That always looks good to me. And I can put in this next layer of the dirt, or I can let it dry a little bit. I think I'll start working. Yeah, I think I'll put it in. So I'll just wipe up this green here because I'm really pretty done with that already. I'm glad there's a little green pumpkin right here in the middle, because that's going to tie together those greens. You need to have, if you have one color someplace, it needs to be someplace else. In fact, I wish I hadn't gotten rid of all that, because I can just put that one little pumpkin in right now. Hello, little pumpkin. You're just going to get done early because the color for you is already made. And then there's a highlight right at the top of that. So I'll just pull that off with a thirsty brush. A thirsty brush is when you rinse it in the water and then dry it on your paper towel, and then just, it'll lift right up, it'll lift the paint right up. Okay, so now I am gonna go to this background. And this is basically, you know, a dried field. So burnt sienna and raw sienna and a little bit of French ultramarine blue. Ought to just kind of gray that down. I kind of like that. So now a lot of water in that. Again, this part, I don't want this to be detailed. I just want this to suggest dirt. Just painting some, it's not really dirt. I think it's a dried out grasses. So that's the first layer. And I'll just add a little bit of French and a little bit more burnt sienna to that to get some a little bit darker. And I'm putting this just into wet, just so that it's has a little bit of blurriness back there, so it's not just so plain. Over here, see my green bled into my grays. There's a little bit of a shadow through that field right in there. And then these are hay bales. I did leave this one in, but I didn't put these pumpkins in. So that's that part. And now I'm just going to start painting the truck. So the truck is, I'm going to wipe up my palette and get a fresh start on this. A rusty old truck is basically burnt sienna. You can see just going into it, burnt sienna. Now this burnt sienna is Winsor Newton, and really what it is Indian red. It's PR 101, Pigment Red 101. And when I put a little bit of permanent rose into that, let me move these so you can see the light better on the permanent rose. It just makes that red color. Now when I sketch this is the most important thing I'm gonna say so far, is that when I have highlights on the pumpkins and highlights on the truck, and I'm using ink, I'm going to make a line on both sides of the highlight, and I'm gonna leave that much lighter than the rest of it. So right here, I'm gonna go in with this. This is my basic rusty truck color. And I am not a perfect painter. I like things to have mistakes. I like them to not be too perfect. So if I kind of go over something, I just don't worry about it. I just keep going because the big picture is what I'm working for. Okay, so that was that. And now I can mix that with French ultramarine blue, and it just goes right to the dark part of this. So I'll just add that in wet into wet. Because I painted it, I was painting wet on dry, and now I have, the paint's wet, so now when I add this. So anyway, I'm just kind of looking to see where the shadows are. And just adding them in, sort of, again, it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm gonna go to a little bit smaller brush, very smaller. This one is a number 2, and I just wanna put this around the window because there's a black piece of plastic. It often degrades around these windows. So I'm just gonna basically like pretend I've got a coloring book. I'm just gonna fill in all these lines now. And this window, squint at it. It's not really showing what's behind. You're not looking through it. It's very foggy, but it is one of the lightest parts of the painting. So I think it's just a little bit of gray in there. You could put some of that brown, the dirt brown in there, just to kind of hint, oh yeah, maybe you're seeing that. And then over here it's darker because this is, I think, the part you're looking in the cab. So just using those colors, and then there's a little highlight, so I left that with, went around that with the ink. Leave that. And now the highlight going around this top cab is just these same colors, but lots of water. So I'm just gonna, yeah, just like that. Same colors, lots of water. And I just go around, and that will make it look like the sun is shining on it. And I have that same, I have a little bit bluer color right here, but it's still very light, just this little spot right here, very light. And then I have some dark, so the dark gray is French and burnt sienna. I'm laughing because I always say like my favorite mixture is Antwerp and burnt sienna, but I probably use French and burnt sienna more because I live in the fog, so I'm always making gray. And here we go. And then again, this window is just the same color right in here, but just lighter. Okay, and I'm just going to keep going. That's that first part of the truck. It already looks like a rusty truck, I think. And this part here is the blues, the grayish blue. Yeah, that's about the right amount of water in it. I'm just gonna fill this in one line at a time. So I'm gonna try to go as fast as I can. Okay, this is the rusty part of the truck. And there's hay. They very carefully place the hay around the pumpkins. And what I did when I traced the hay was the same thing I did with the truck and the highlights, is that where there's highlights in the hay, I made a line around it. And when there's darks, I put a little line around that. So the brush is just not going fast enough for me. So the highlights are the same color, but lots of water. And then the shadows are the colors, probably with a little bit more French in it. And this is that blue. Can you hear those birds? I think those are the dark-eyed juncos out there. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to follow the shadow, the colors that are in this photograph that I'm working from. And working, it's mostly wet and wet. No, I'm sorry. It's mostly wet on dry, and then a little bit of wet into that. I'm trying to make it look rusty. And highlights and shadows. That's my whole job right now. Just try to just fill it in, matching the colors in the picture, and not really worrying too much about perfection. Because I think in the long run, this is going to look like a truck. Like I said, I'm just quickly painting in all the little pieces. Okay, I'm doing the truck right now. I think I'll keep going with the truck. Get the truck done and then add the pumpkins. So, yay. That's a lot of paint there. Maybe it'll blend. That's a lot of pink. Okay, here we go. So when I make a mistake, I don't worry about it. I just go on. This is this bottom of the rusted out bumper is kind of pinkish red, really. I like that. And this here. For some reason, there's a little brightness right there. Okay, and then all this is this too, but then it's got those shadows in it. Again, where there's highlights, I've gone around them, and I'm going to leave those light. This is my base color. Now I'm going to go back in with the shadows, which is French ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And just figure out where those go. I see some real dark right there on the shadow of this bumper right here, so if there's little highlights, so I went around that. And it's the little highlights that make the darks really look dark. I think that's just these two things right here. I left those little light areas because I think it's just a little lighter in there. So we want just everything to look old, messy and old, nothing too perfect. We don't want to fix this truck. We don't want to, I'm thinking of this time as we were painting old barns with Evelyn, right, my beloved watercolor teacher, and she said, well, you just spent $100,000 fixing that barn. So we don't want to fix this truck. We want it to look super old. Okay, good. There, good enough. And now this is just like a little bit of brown and a little white in here. I think it's a broken out headlight is what I think it is. So the little highlight of it is, I guess, the glass showing. I'm going to leave it almost pure white right in there. And that'll look like, hopefully it'll look like the light's shining on there. Okay, I'm going to do this bumper now. The bumpers is that blue, the French ultramarine blue with a little bit of burnt sienna in it, a lot of water. So this part here. Oh, I didn't leave the highlights. Oy, I didn't draw those in. I love how the French ultramarine blue granulates. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the little bits of the French ultramarine blue. It's a ground up rock, and when the pigment gets wet, it flows into the water, or yeah, and then the water, the little pieces of pigment go into the paper, into the bumps of the paper, and that's called granulation. I think it's so beautiful. And then I just have these little highlights up here. Let's see if I can do it without the pen. And then that is dark. That is the shadow of the headlamp, I think. Oops. I just wasted a color they don't make anymore. So again, these are just, it's just almost, I mean, I haven't really used any new colors. These are all the same, but you can see the variety that you get with just French ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Making that look round. This is pretty dark right here. Okay, shall I do the tires? They're kind of just black. And black is, all it is it's our friends, French ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. That's all that is, so I might as well do these. You can see the highlights right there. Those are probably a little bit too bright. I can go back in and fix those. Here's a tire over here. You can actually see the treads on it. I'll put the shadows of the tires on when I'm closer to being done. If I paint down here too much, I'll get it on my hands and muff it up. Yeah, there's shadows there. This is even darker. I'll give it another little coat. And the shadows will be matching this almost exact. Alrighty, so now I'm going to work on the pumpkins. I think I'm going to take a minute just to get a different brush. I should have had that out, so sorry for the interruption. Okay, so this is the same brush, but it's a little bigger. This is a number 4. And I'm going to clean this up right here, this blue. And I'm going to make my orange. My favorite orange is yellow, Windsor yellow, or bumblebee yellow, or Hansa yellow medium, and permanent rose. Just makes good pumpkin color. I've tried many shades of orange, all kinds, and when I just mix this myself, I like it the best. Again, here I am going in on the pumpkins, and the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to leave those highlights. I went around, I drew around them. There could be a little bit of yellow, so like in this first pumpkin I'm doing, there's just like a little bit of highlight. Actually, it's reflected light from that yellow pumpkin next to it. So we want the reflected lights in the shadows. That's going to blend in. That's okay. That's a dark green stem on that little yellow pumpkin. If I go from pumpkin to pumpkin, kind of go around a little bit, I think what'll happen is they'll dry and I'll be able to just paint them without worrying about them bleeding into each other too much, because this one's very orange. So I just paint it orange, leaving the highlight on the pumpkin below it, and then I just have a little bit of, really it's basically French ultramarine blue. Just up in this corner, there's a little bit of shadow right there. Let's put it in. I can put it next to my highlights. And then this one is the same color. That's hay. We'll get to the hay after we do the pumpkins. You can change the orange by adding more yellow and more pink. What's this guy? This guy's yellow, kind of dark orange, kind of a bright orange. This guy's bright orange. And I'm just going to go in with some different colors into those pure oranges so that each pumpkin has a little bit of a different feel to it, a different color. I'm doing that with pink and with French ultramarine blue. Just a couple, just a touch with your brush will change those pumpkins and make them look round, and especially when you do wet into wet. You've painted it and then just add another color and voila. That's the green he's already done. This one's kind of white, and then there's a little pumpkin behind it. This is a pumpkin. It has a little highlight right there. More pumpkins. We live in the capital pumpkin of the world. So that one, what's this? This is just some darks in there. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and put those little, I love to, when the paint's wet, I've just painted it, and then I just touch the color. Oh, this is dark right here. That's what that is. That's not a highlight. That's what I love to do, is just put that little bit of color into the wet paint, and then it just looks like a watercolor. I'm looking at this guy. It needs more dark to highlight that. This is kind of a white pumpkin right here, so it's just mostly water. Like that. Now I'm going to do these highlights. So again, the color is the same color that I was working with, but it's basically just dirty water. So I dip my brush in the water, and I just make sure that I have almost pure water in my brush, and then I can do these highlights. Now this one has darks in the highlight, so I can see if it's wet. That's wet, and if I just put the orange paint in there while it's wet, it will sort of blend. Yeah, it worked. We'll see if I like it later. Okay, again, now I'm going back to my highlight color, which is so much water and the tiniest bit of orange. This one's highlighted. That's highlighted. The highlight has a highlight, and it has a like medium white. This guy, I just added too much paint. What are you? What are you back there? Okay, this guy's got a highlight. These have a oops, some stems in the yellow pumpkin. And this was actually a dark pumpkin right there. And then that's like that. Okay, I'm gonna kind of stop right there. And then, oh, these guys need highlights right here. I did that backwards. That was the dark. Got my highlight in my dark. Okay, now I'm gonna paint the straw. The straw is basically raw sienna and burnt sienna. I use these two colors, raw sienna and burnt sienna, for sand, since we live on the beach, and straw. These two colors work well for that. Again, this is just all the straw. I'm just putting in the highlight over all of it. Kind of getting impatient now. I'm gonna go a little faster. And this is straw, and that's straw. There's, what's that? Highlight, orange highlight. Okay, fine, I missed that. Orange highlight, orange highlight. Okay, now I'm gonna make a darker straw color, which is gonna be burnt sienna and French ultramarine blue. And now what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm putting in the darks. You guys must be just bored to death watching this. Luckily, you can speed up these videos. Over here we have it. Now I'm going to put just some burnt sienna into that straw. But I'm really leaving those highlights very light. That's going to make it look like the straw more than anything. It's the highlights. Okay, I'm going to stop at that. And now I'm going to put in these hay bales. And the hay bales are the same color I was just using. So they're going to be just bigger and less detailed. They're the background colors now. That's a lot of. Goes around this. Okay, so again, so I'm faking this bale. I didn't put those little pumpkins in. And a little more burnt sienna into this. Not in the highlights. I want to leave the highlight on that broken headlamp on the truck. Now I'm going to go in with these darks. So burnt sienna and French ultramarine blue is my dark for my shadows in this, and over here and below that highlight, around that, right in here. And over here on this bale, down to the ground. I'm just going to stop with the hay like that. So really now the last thing I have to do is just put in this bottom foreground with the dirt and the shadows. So I'm going back to those colors that I used for my dirt, this soft dirt in here, which was burnt sienna and French ultramarine blue, lots of water. Just kind of a gray brown color. I can add some of my permanent rose in there if I want to. Did that work? Not really. More burnt sienna. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, lots of water. So I'm just gonna paint this in all over, and then I'm gonna go back in and put the shadows. And there's a couple spots where it's very bright, like right here. Oh, that's too dark already. Okay, yeah, that's about the right value. Goes around that. Just, okay, so right around this tire. So I'm painting this, and then I'm gonna go in and put the darks, the dark shadows. That's a little light area. There's a little, there's a little reddish light area right here. And then there's all this. So I'm just filling in all the rest of my paper with this dirt color. I like to sign my ink and watercolors with permanent pen, just with the ink. I did that already. And there's a little bit of orangish red, like pumpkin color almost, right in here. So I'm gonna make that stand out right there. Now I'm gonna put some of it right here. This is the dirt that is, I think it's reflecting some of the light. And just make this look like little blobs of grasses. And now I'm gonna go in with my shadows into my dirt, and that's my best friend, my two best friends, burnt sienna and French ultramarine blue. I almost wanted to be as dark as that tire color. In fact, I can go over the tire again just to make the color that a little darker. There's a nice line right there. This is gonna make, this dark here is gonna make that bumper show up. This is all dark. Again, it's just gonna almost match the color of the tire. So I can go over the tire again to make it even darker. And that little bit is there. Now this part of the shadow here gets a little lighter as it goes to the corner. I'm just gonna fill it in. And then all of a sudden, it just feels like the light's on it because you have the highlights and you have these nice shadows. And so highlights and shadows are the trick to painting something that looks like it's in the sun. I think I'm just gonna stop with that much. Thank you so much for watching.